dear friends and net aspirants, welcome back to yet another video of High Point, our channel. Welcome back to our channel. And in this video, we'll be looking at how queer theory is important in cultural studies. That what is the connection between queer theory and cultural studies. We will have an overview about the important points related to the concepts. And if you want more elaborate and systematically arranged study materials for cultural studies or any other topic related to NTA, UGC, NET, JRF, English language and literature, you can visit my website www.highpoint.in. You can have the free trial and see whatever we have provided. And if you're interested, let me know via this WhatsApp number. You can call me or WhatsApp me in this number or in the Instagram platform too. You can contact me if you want to know more about the study materials and the bonuses that we are providing and any other facilities that we are providing and the fee structure as well. So from the website itself, you can subscribe to the course if you are interested, or you can have a chat with me if you want to know more. And also, if you have not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please subscribe to it if you are interested to have more materials related to English literature. Moving on, let's have an introduction about the topic of this video. Queer studies is an attempt to redefine sexual identities by seeking a cultural political space where a homosexual is no more the perverted or sick other of heterosexuality. So heterosexuality is the most promoted and accepted form of sexuality, right? What is sexuality? Sexuality is the what type of interest you have in your sexual interest. It denotes your sexual interest. It does not denote your sexual intercourse, but it actually heterosexuality is a kind of identity, sexual identity. What kind of sexual identity you have, what kind of interest that you have about your sexual relations. Okay, what kind of sexual relations that you want to have. Maybe you are interested to the opposite sex, they are heterosexuals. If you are interested in the in sexually or non-sexually interested in the same sex, then you are homosexual. That means you are a gay or lesbian or various other kind of sexualities also you can find. There are bisexual, LGBTQA plus. You must be aware of it. And June is Pride Month. If you know, June month is Pride Month, in which we celebrate this hetero diversity of sexual identities, LGBTQ A plus. So there are several type of sexualities that we can find. Not only heterosexual. Heterosexuality is the most promoted and celebrated and accepted form of sexuality in everywhere, in common spheres, in cultural spheres, or in literary spheres, or in movies or literature. Wherever you go, you will find the heterosexuality. The sexual attraction between men and women are always promoted, but sexual attraction or interest between females and men, or a woman or men to both the sexes, same sex as well as opposite sex, that is bisexualities. All these are not that promoted. They are considered as perversions or sick, or under religious norms and all. It is a sickness. It is not something that is natural for them. So they consider, nowadays also people consider it as something. It is a situation that is, it's a sick situation where you have some disease or something. That's why if you if you come to know that my son or my daughter or my brother is homosexual, then maybe your parents will try to give counselings, try to give medicines, try to give medical supports to that person. Actually, it's quite natural. People will have different kind of sexuality. It's so common. So pure studies, it attempts to redefine sexual identity. So far, sexual identity, heterosexuality is the only accepted form of sexuality. But through queer studies, what is it attempting? It attempts to redefine sexual identity by seeking a cultural political space. So how come this will get identified? When you get a space, when you get a space means when you when this kind of identities, this kind of sexualities are existing, people will get awareness, and they'll also will have a courage to come up with their own sexuality. Those kind of people, those who have homosexuality, bisexuality, or whatever kind of immense amount of sexuality that they have, and they fearlessly could claim their sexuality, and they will have a space politically and culturally in society. So that's how queer studies are attempting to define sexual identities. So homosexualities, so far they are considered as perverted, sick, or other of homosexuality. They are not identified as something as natural, something as worthy, something as quite integral to one's own sexuality. Queer studies is a result of political movements and activism happened in the latter decades of 20th century. So queer studies, like any other movements, it never emerged in literature first, but it emerged like feminism also. Queer studies also emerged as a result of political movements done by LGBTQ community people and activists, and as a result, queer studies started in the latter decades of 20th century. The first meeting of the British Gay Lesbian Front took place at the London School of Economics in 1970. So that was the historically first meeting of official meeting of gay people, that means homosexual people. British Gay Liberation Front, that meeting took place at the London School of Economics in 1970, and the first annual Gay Pride March on 1st April 1972. So first annual Gay Pride March happened in 1972, but today we celebrate. So nowadays we celebrate June as Pride Month. Queer Studies tries to locate a whole new cultural space for thus far marginalized community. So women are marginalized. At the same time, these different type of sexualities are also sidelined or marginalized. They never get a chance, they never get a space to express themselves. People won't accept them, people won't see them as one among them, so they'll always put marginalized. They never get a chance to enter into the center, have power, or have recognition. So queer studies, it tries to locate a whole new cultural space, political space for thus far marginalized community of LGBTQ a plus. Y plus? Plus means, more sexualities can be added, can be identified as more sexualities other than homosexual, heterosexual, gay, lesbian, asexual, bisexual, uh, queer sexualities. There will be different kind of sexualities. So plus signifies that there will be different and more than LGBTQA. There will be more sexualities than this. Okay, and that will get added to it. Now, major concepts. How queer theories are relevant in cultural studies. Queer theories are relevant because it is all about identity. Sexuality is an identity for a person. So in that way, identity is also very much important for in cultural studies. So in that way, there is a direct connection. Other than that, let's see what are the major concepts. Gay and lesbian theory assumes that sexuality and sexual preferences or orientation play a prominent role in the construction of social identity. So, gay and lesbian theory, it presumes or assumes that what is your sexuality? According to your sexuality or sexual preference or sexual orientation, that identity plays a prominent role in defining or in constructing your social identity. If you are a heterosexual, if you display yourself as a heterosexual, then you have a certain kind of identity. If you display yourself as a gay or a bisexual or a lesbian, then that will provide you a different kind of identity. So your identity, social identity, will be constructed around your sexual preferences, sexual orientation, or sexual identity. Sexual practices and relationships that are outside the purview of a law that recognizes only heterosexual marriages are deemed to be untenable. Thus, heterosexuality is taken as given and natural. So these sexualities, all other sexualities except heterosexuality, they are outside the purview of law. Even law does not recognize this homosexualities or other sexualities, but heterosexuality. It is only heterosexuality is only taken as given, which is naturally given and which is natural. All other things are, they are perversions and sickness. It is viewed like that on the ground of various things. Socially, it is viewed like that. Culturally, it is viewed like that. Or religiously mainly, homosexualities and other kind of sexualities are viewed as perversions and sickness and sin. So that need to be changed. Homosexual as a social category emerges essentially in the post-Renaissance period. So we can see in literature there are not much representation for homosexuality, but homosexuality they started to recognize as a social category, as an existence for homosexuals as a social category. It got emergence essentially in the post renaissance period. In the 19th century, several legal and medical books emerged labeling homosexual as deviants or criminals. Even though their representations were quite suspicious, they were represented as criminals, deviants, but there were representations, there were recognition that such a group of people are existing. So in the 19th century, in several legal related to law, legal and medical books emerged, and in that book these homosexuals and other type of sexualities were labeled as deviant, someone who is so different from the normal category, who is not normal. At the same time, they also labeled as criminals in those legal and medical books. Even though their representations are questionable, but still there was a representation. That means they recognized the existence of such a social category from post renaissance period onwards. Now, queer studies suggest like gender sexuality is primarily socially constructed and an enacted aspect of life and individuality. See, queer studies also suggest that like gender identity is a culturally constructed phenomenon. Just like that, sexual identity is also socially constructed. Because socially constructed, that's why heterosexuality is the only sexuality which is accepted. Other sexualities are not accepted. That is because it is socially constructed, but naturally it is existing. Even though many people are not having many people do not have any courage to come up with their sexuality, but still it exists, naturally exists. So it is a socially constructed ideology. Next point is that post-structuralist theories were used by queer theorists like Judith Butler, Edelman, and Diana Fuss in order to discuss issues like identity, marginality, authenticity, and epistemology. So, post-structuralist and deconstructionist theories were used mainly in order to define, in order to come up with the concepts related to queer theories, especially theoreticians like Judith Butler, Lee Edelman, and Diana Fuss. Lesbian theorists argue that even heterosexual women exhibit a certain fear of lesbianism. So it's like lesbian relationship means women are attracted to women, right? So lesbian theorists argue that even heterosexual women they display, heterosexual women also display or exhibit a certain kind of a different kind of fear of lesbianism. They even fear lesbian people. So it's like lesbian people they are attracted to women, are attracted to women only. Even heterosexual women they have some kind of fear to lesbian people, lesbianism. That is, even the feminist critics of patriarchy are informed by an acceptance of heterosexuality as the standard and lesbianism as a deviation, and lesbians are monsters or unnatural being. See, feminism is about equality, getting equality irrespective of the sexual organs that a person possesses. Feminism is basically that, okay? But even feminist critics they accept this patriarchal notion of heterosexuality as the standard form of sexual identity, and lesbianism as other, as a deviation. Lesbianism were recognized by patriarchal feminist critics as something deviant. And lesbians are monsters. Lesbians are unnatural beings. Look at the controversy. Look at the contradiction that we can see in here. So feminism is about equality, but they are arguing for heterosexual women. They are not recognizing lesbian women as natural, and they are not deviants, but they recognize them as what? Monsters. So they don't feel that feminism should be inclusive of lesbians as well. In feminism, so far, the experience of the white middle class urban woman was a standard subject of analysis. So, this is what is the problem with feminism. Feminism recognized the white, patriarchal, middle class, urban woman as standard form of or standard subject matter for feminism. They never included black women. They never included third world women. They never included Dalit women. They never included lesbian women. They never included upper class or lower class women. They never included village country women. But they mainly talked about the rights and equalities of white, middle class, urban women, who are heterosexuals. Homosexuals, they never identified as a standard subject to include in their analysis, include in their discussions. And black people or any other people who are not white or not middle class or urban, they never thought of including any other women who stands out of these categories as worth to have an analysis, as worth to have a representation, even in feminism. Lesbian feminists emphasized the need for the accommodation of differences within the feminist practice. So, practice and feminist critique has many problems like this, that they were not inclusive. Even though they were talking about equality, but they were talking about mainly the white women, middle class, urban women, heterosexual women's equalities, not non-European women's, not upper class or middle class, lower class women's problems, not country women's problem, not lesbian or bisexual identities problem. They were not inclusive. So lesbian feminists, they stressed and emphasized the need, and they urged for the accommodation, inclusiveness of differences within the feminist practice. So feminism, even though they say that this gender is socially constructed or culturally constructed, we need equality on and all, but when it comes to non-European people, when it comes to lesbian people, bisexual people, asexual people, queer people, when it comes to country women, when it comes to uh, homosexual people, they never recognized them as equal to them. So inclusiveness need to be practiced within feminism itself. Lesbian feminists urged this. And next, some lesbian studies have suggested that the women-women bond need not always be sexual, but it can be mutual help networks, camaraderie, women's institutions, female friendship, etc., which were labeled as lesbian continuum by Andrea Rich. So it's not that every other relationship between women and women are lesbian relationship, but they can be a kind of companionship and female friendships and help relationship. It is not, no need to be labeled as lesbian relationship, but they are labeled as lesbian continuum by Adrian Rich. Adrian Rich, one of the major thinker in lesbian studies. Queer theory suggests the possibilities of political change where the homosexual can find a voice. So queer studies or theories always talk about the changes that need to be happen in the cultural and social sphere, political sphere as well, to have a voice for everyone who has different kind of sexualities, different kind of identities because of their sexualities. Gay lesbian theories are sensitive to racial and class categories within sexuality. So the concepts related to gay lesbian theories, they are sensitive. They are so much affected by racial and class categories. So the gay lesbian theories which are applicable in the Western world may not be applicable in India, may not be applicable in the Eastern world, because their culture, their racial values, their class categories are different. So according to these racial and class categories, gay lesbian theories are sensitive. They need to be modified. Double marginalization can occur to gay, lesbian individuals from the economically disadvantaged working class Asian immigrant population. So that is why gay lesbian theories are not applicable for everyone in the same way. It is sensitive. It is actually sensitive to racial and class differences, because for a white lesbian or a white gay person, their experience will be something different from who is a working woman in the Western world, who is not a European person and who is an Asian immigrant, and who is from also a disadvantaged population, economically a struggling category. If a person belonging to such a group, then there will be already a marginalization will going on, because he is not white, he or she is not white, he is not economically advantaged, or he is not she is or he is not educated that much, or for many reasons, for his or her skin color, for many reasons this person is also, or this person is already under marginalization. If that person is a gay or lesbian or any other sexualities that person has, according to that, that person will experience double marginalization. So that's why gay lesbian theories are so sensitive to racial class categories. In addition to frame a homosexual canon, queer theories dictate a veiled homosexual thematic in apparently heterosexual works. So they say that homosexual canon should be there. If when you have a canon, that means that there will be many people, many things won't get a representation. So more than that, what is needed? They dictate a veiled homosexual thematic in apparently heterosexual works. In heterosexual works too, you will find very wild representations of queer themes. Now, as an extension, they also dictated the homophobic tendencies in classic literary works. So, in classical works, in heterosexual works, where heterosexual relationships are celebrated, in that work you will find a kind of resistance to homosexualities. So, in such classical works, in classical literary works also, you will find a kind of resistance or homophobic tendencies can be seen in classical works. Queer theory emphasizes the liminal nature of identity. Here, Butler gives a new way of dealing with the issue of identity. Butler says that Judith Butler says that identity is not a stable entity as gender. Identity is repeated, performed identity, and got established. So just like women as an identity which is socially and culturally formed, or men as an identity which is socially and culturally formed, it is not something that came into existence just like that. It is not a stable entity, first of all. Like gender, pureness or sexuality is repeatedly performed, as heterosexuality repeatedly performed by people, and is the most popular kind of sexuality. And as time passed, this identity got established and it got popularity and it got propagation. So any other sexuality which is not heterosexual, that is no that is viewed as perversion, that is viewed as sickness, that is viewed as sin. That kind of identities were associated to homosexuality. So such kind of identity emerged because it continuously and repeatedly performed, and that got established. Feminism presupposed the category of women as a stable and unitary subject, ignores other equally crucial factors of identity such as class, race, and sexuality. So, in feminism, this is another problem with the feminism, that feminism presupposed, it presumed that women as a category which is stable and which is a unitary subject. And while they this feminist identified and presumed women as a category which is stable, it ignores other equally crucial factors related to women like class, race, and sexuality of women. So they assume, feminists assume initially, even they assume that women are heterosexual, like men are heterosexual, women are also heterosexual. They never identified lesbian relationship, bisexual relationship, bisexual or asexual or queer or lesbian kind of sexualities and identities that women can have. So, but they presupposed this category of women as stable, belongs to middle class, who is a white woman, who is heterosexual, who lives in urban area. This kind of presupposition happened in feminism. That's why it happened to ignore all other some crucial factors which are relevant in identity. Which are relevant in identity, which are these crucial factors: class, race, sexuality. That's why feminism is not all inclusive. So it is fault to argue that being female or male creates certain kind of identity. So it's not that if you are female you are heterosexual, if you are male you are heterosexual. No, being male, being in a sexuality or having a sexual organ doesn't mean that you have a particular kind of sexual identity. That can be different. Okay, if you, even if you have a female sexual organ, doesn't mean that you are a heterosexual person. You may be heterosexual, or maybe you are asexual, you are pure sexuality, you have, maybe you have bisexuality, you may have lesbian sexuality as well. So the same goes with male as well. So they argue that, see, queer theorists argue that being female or male doesn't mean that you belong to a certain kind of identity. Identity is created by culturally, not physically, not biologically. Okay, identity identity is switching of roles. It is not closed, stable, or unitary, which is separate from the other. So sexuality is only relevant when you come across a person where to whom you are sexually attracted. See, identity is switching of roles. That means, see, I am a daughter in my house, I am a student. If I am going to a college for studying, if I am going to a college for teaching something, then I am uh, a teacher there. If uh, I have some children, I have two kids. If I have children, then I am mother to them. I have the identity of the mother. For my husband, I have the identity of his wife. For my neighbors, I have some other identities. Some other people, other I have some other identities. So identity is switching roles. So identity is not stable everywhere. You don't have the same identity, and people's sexuality is not relevant in every other situation. But we associate this sexual identity to every other situation. It is not closed, that it is not closed, or it is not neither stable, or it is not unitary, but it changes, it's switching. Identities are switched according to the situation that we are in. Okay, so they are separated from each other. Our identity is not our sexuality. Okay, but people tend to give, according to a person's sexuality, they tend to give a kind of identity. See, for homosexual, they are identified as criminals, perverts, sick, sinful persons. But actually, what is their situation? Their situation is quite natural. They have a certain kind of sexual orientation which is quite personal to them. Okay, so give space and take space. Now, the other is installed in the self to attain a self identity. The self thus contains the other within it. So it's a kind of bit confusing idea that, heterosexuality, how heterosexuality is relevant. how comes heterosexuality can get some meaning when, see, I'll give a very simple example. Happiness and sorrowness, right? Happiness and unhappiness. Let's say happiness. How come happiness got some relevance? Come happiness is important? Because we know that there will be some unhappiness will happen, right, in our life. So happiness got some relevance because the meaning of unhappiness is within happiness itself. So same way the other is installed, other is there in the self to attain the self identity. The self thus contains the other within it. So it's not separated. We are trying to separate it, but it is not separated. It contains, everything contains. Queer theory questions the modes by which sexual boundaries of the inside and outside are constructed. So how these sexual boundaries are constructed? So if you are having a female organ, then you need to go like this. You need to be attracted to men only. Who is constructing this? So pure theory questions the modes by which sexual boundaries are constructed, inside and outside are constructed. Using law and language, heterosexuality secures itself against the intrusion of the homosexual containment. So, heterosexuality is so powerful, became so powerful. How? Using law. In law, homosexualities are not recognized. You won't get a participation because law is not recognizing you if you are a homosexual. And in language too, you won't find, see, if you go to a toilet, there will be homosexual, there won't be a category for homosexualities, there won't be a category for uh, you know uh, uh, transgender people. You won't find a separate toilet, right? But nowadays in forms that are given to fill up, you'll find other or transgender, transsexual. There only most probably only two category of sexualities are or genders are identified: male and female, or boy or girl. That kind of things are identified. But what about homosexuals? What about transgenders? What about transsexuals? So it's like heterosexuality use cultural as well as law, linguistic possible things in order to secure its position against the intrusion, against the identification of existence of homosexualities. Okay, heterosexuality is pervading everywhere in language, in law, in literature, culturally also heterosexuality is identified. And using all these institutions, it secures heterosexuality is so secure that it resists against homosexual containment. Contemporary cultural studies of homosexuality speaks of a situational homosexuality, same-sex practices that result from circumstances, imprisonment, and the barracks. So, cultural studies nowadays, cultural studies, uh, what homosexual so the contemporary cultural studies speaks of homosexuality about the situational homosexuality. So they are may not be internally, they are not homosexuals, but because of some situation that happened, homosexuality arises in one person's mind. Circumstances like imprisonment and the life. Some people are living in barracks. So in such situations, situational homosexuality can happen. So in cultural studies nowadays, situational homosexuality is also one of the major themes that are spoken by homosexual. The critics of homosexuality. Now, what are the conclusions? Here we have arrived at the conclusion. Let's see. Queer theory demonstrates how heterosexuality has been considered the norm and homosexuality as deviant. See, about a person's sexuality or sexual orientation, what is more normal? What is the normal thing? It is heterosexual. It is identified and it is demonstrated like that. It is created like that. It is not naturally like that, but it is through repeated conventional practice, it happen, it is a norm in the society. And on the other side, homosexuality is considered as deviance, sickness, or sinfulness. Okay, so it demonstrates, queer theory explains about how this happened. It argues that identity is secured only through performance and repetition. So this kind of sexual identity is also like any other identity. Sexual identity is also secured or happened or came into being through performance and repetition. Homosexuality is a social construction, the result of power relations between the dominant sexual types, and how such a construction delegitimize gays, lesbians as deviants, criminals, and immoral. So this also discussed. AIDS has added to the criminalization of the cure. So there is a norm, there is a belief that so AIDS was, you know, AIDS became so AIDS spreaded and AIDS came into being because of pure relationship, because of homosexual relationship. They promoting, they are spreading AIDS more and more in the society. So type of uh, uh, this type of concepts even added to the criminalization of the cure. And what is needed in a study of pure canon? A battle for political power and social acceptance. So these LGBTQA plus identities, they need political power in order to have social acceptance. So these people, they don't have any political and cultural power. That's why they are marginalized, just like women. Okay, so political power and social acceptance that they need, while theorists argue for a fine tuning of race and gender studies to address queer sexuality. So, as they want political power and social acceptance, at the same time, feminism and racial studies, feminism, race studies, gender studies, they also need to address pure sexualities. It is not something that is outside these things. In gender studies, pure sexualities are relevant. In race studies, queer sexualities are relevant. In cultural studies, queer sexuality identities are relevant. So there should be a hedging in these studies as well. Race, gender studies should address pure sexualities among blacks and post-colonial societies. Okay, so these gender issues or sexual issues, sexual identity issues are not restricted to the Western culture only. It is these kind of problems are there in Indian culture, post-colonial societies are there, in among black non-European people. These issues are there, they need to be addressed. Okay, through various kinds of theories and various kinds of studies and all, like cultural studies, gender studies, race studies. I think that's all about Q studies and cultural studies. So I hope this was clear to you. If you have any doubts, drop a comment in the comment section, or through my WhatsApp number. You can contact me or call me and clear out your doubts. If you have more and if you want more study materials for cultural studies, you can visit my website and see the slot given to cultural studies. After having the free trial, you can see whatever we are providing there. And in my Instagram too, we have provided a lot of study cards related to cultural studies. You can go and visit and follow me there if you are interested too. So that's all about it. Meet you in the next video session. Until then, stay tuned to High Point and be happy wherever you are, guys, and strive for the best in your life. Ta-ta.